I think the biggest thing about when you think about Houston culture, and everyone is going to use different words, but I think everyone gets to the same point, right? Which is defense, hard-minded. We're going to dive after loose balls. We're a defensive first team. But I think ultimately what we are is authentic. I think in this day and age, I think people always want to talk about culture and family, and it feels super forced. And our culture kind of precedes that.
Things I wanted to ask you is just give us an idea of kind of what your role is with the men's basketball team as the external director of operations.
I lovingly say I'm the program bulldog. I think everyone needs a bulldog. That tends to be me. But really, it's everything you see of the program. I kind of have my hands in some kind of way, from social media to videos to graphics to photos to the branding to uniform design. I kind of am in those places, and to game day.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like, and that it sounds like a very, very busy, but interesting and fun job too. One thing that I think is really interesting, and I know that the national media kind of touched on this a little bit during the Final Four run, but I can tell you, I was at U of H from '92 to '98, and we weren't the team wasn't that good, and there was not a lot of fan engagement. I would go to games, and there would be, hardly anyone there. And so, 10 years ago, the Sampson family kind of came on board, and it really changed. I mean, now you're looking at like the Fertitta Center selling out, every game, tons of fan engagement. Can you walk me through kind of what that was like and some of the more interesting aspects of like trying to get people involved in something that, why should they be, interested in it after, 20 something years of kind of not that good of teams?
Yeah, I lovingly say I was the tough recruit. I didn't come that first year. What I didn't realize that first year, so the 14-15 year, was I was doing a year-long interview with Coach Sampson, who I will refer to as my dad. I always feel a little silly calling him Coach or Coach Sampson. But he would call me after every game. He would call me just, hey, what would you do here? How would you get people engaged here? How would you engage students? And, my background is that I was the director of marketing at the College of Charleston. We were in charge of 21 sports, all the marketing, promotions, sponsorship, sales. So I just went through step by step. This is how you engage students. This is how you engage a fan base. And so after that first year, he called me and said, you have to come. That first year, it was a little quirky. I was not on the basketball staff, but I was within the marketing department for the athletic department. So I was on Tom Herman's marketing staff the Peach Bowl year, so H-Town Takeover, all of that. I was a part of that marketing staff. And I would be on the field introducing myself and going, okay, you guys excited about basketball? And I would be trying to, and I literally would have people look at me and go, one, oh, we still have a team. So I thought to myself, okay, this is where we're starting. I have to introduce the sport. There was a lot of conversations of, well, we thought it didn't start till February. And I was like, that's concerning. We're halfway through conference season by then. But that was where we started. And I started doing, little things. I interned with Sports Illustrated when I was in college, where Sports Illustrated really wanted to know the differences between campuses, right? Like college age is usually when college students make purchasing powers for the first time. It's the first time they're going to the grocery store and they're going to buy, laundry detergent or toilet paper or dishwasher soap. And a lot of times the brands that you purchase, the first time you're going to Target is kind of the brands you're locked into the rest of your life, right? It just becomes purchase habits. And so every college campus is so unique. I call it the campus DNA. And I went to the University of Oklahoma. I was in a sorority. Kids go to OU, kids go to Texas A&M, because they want to be a part of a very typical college experience. I lovingly say my college experience was really similar to Legally Blonde. There was a lot of songs. There was a lot of candle ritual. I mean, it was nonsense. But I knew from that football season that Houston was going to be really different. So those first couple years, I figured out when classes let out at UH, which was on the 30, and I would go sit in those big school buildings. And I wanted to hear these students talk. I wanted to know what kind of student we were going to market to, what kind of student was really excited about coming to UH. I would go and sit in the back of big lecture halls and just listen to these kids, before class started. The one thing that I really recognized about UH that was a little bit different than my personal college experience is these kids were so locked in on their next step, right? They chose Houston, not because they grew up excited about being Cougs, but because they were focused on their internship, their career path, that this was a great job city. And so how do you, as the men's basketball program and an athletic department, how do we speak to them? Because none of that is relevant to us, right? We're really focused on, I just need butts and seats, right? I want you to be really, really excited because I knew we were going to have a product that they were going to get excited about. But I would go in and we would have different groups on campus and we would talk about the community that can be built going to these games. This is going to be your networking group. Look in these stands at the football stands, and all of these, our donors are business owners. They love to hire Cougs fans, just like A&M donors want to hire A&M donors. This is where you network. This is where you get involved. This is how you learn about Cougar Pride. These are all the little things about why being a part of Houston athletics makes sense to you. And then in the process, we're going to be pretty good. But really just those first couple of years was just really understanding who I was talking to.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I remember, I mean, when I was there, I used to hang out in the honors college, which was in the basement of the library. And I would sometimes get in such interesting conversations that I would just skip class because I didn't want to like leave the conversation. It was that camaraderie. So I get that. So that's a really cool approach.
My favorite thing now is those kids that were there, and I call them my Hoffines crew. But that, if you think about those kids that were with us in Hoffines and Texas Southern, so that 14 to 18, they are all, we, at the Final Four celebration, a couple of them came up to me. One of the guys, he and his wife just found out they were pregnant. They're all season ticket holders. They're still at the games. They're still part of the Young Alumni Association. And so that's my favorite group because they were with us before we were good. They were Hoffines where you were ducking birds flying by. If you don't remember those days, I don't know if you could appreciate what we're doing now, but that was the age range where I really got to know those kids. And they're not kids anymore.
Lauren, can you discuss the basketball culture just with the University of Houston, just in terms of just the relationship with the fan base and with the team over time? I know starting from this year and just looking back at just your work and elevating just that relationship and making it more just solidified over the years. Just I kind of want to get your just opinion on just how you really made that relationship more just solidified and just confirmed together and really just solidified this season in particularly with the national title run. That must have been very exciting just to see just the fan engagement with the students.
We always laugh. They always laugh at me that I never see the end of games. I'm always like in the fetal position under the chair behind the bench. I got the clip of the Milos JoJo play against Purdue. I got it in the locker room to post. I was like, oh, that's a hell of a play. Because I was like, I can't, and there's a reason why I'm not a coach. I think the biggest thing about when you think about Houston culture, and everyone is going to use different words, but I think everyone gets to the same point, right? Which is defense, hard-minded. We're going to dive after loose balls. We're a defensive first team. But I think ultimately what we are is authentic. I think in this day and age, I think people always want to talk about culture and family, and it feels super forced. And our culture kind of precedes us, right? It is authentically who we are. But with this team, it was such, when you looked at the heartbreak of last season we lost to Duke and Jamal and all that stuff. And it was heartbreak. We drove back from Dallas and it was just, you could hear the sniffles on the bus. But then quickly after you started having the Run It Back campaign, right? And we started announcing the kids one by one going, no, we're doubling down. We're coming back. And I feel like this fan base looked and said, we're with you, right? And there was that crinkle of excitement. I think the best thing that happened to this particular team, was Vegas, which was chaotic. Um, and I lovingly say, you always know when a woman is going through something is when they cut bangs. And Maisie, my brother's 7-year-old, the day we got back from Vegas, came down the stairs and she had cut her bangs, and we were like, yeah, we went through something. But this team needed that, right? Because we had such a core back and we were integrating Milos. But it allowed us, to fly really under the radar nationally, which we hadn't the last couple years. We were kind of top 5 the last couple of years, which is crazy to say about UH. But it allowed this team to be really under the radar. And it was just this fan base and us. And it was like, okay, we're in it together. And so, we come out of the gate, Oklahoma State, we come home and we have all those lumps, and coming out of Vegas, I think, the coaches and we all looked and said, listen, if we can be undefeated going into Kansas, we'll be in a good spot. And then what happened at Kansas happened at Kansas. But I think, that run it back campaign and our fan base knowing that in this era, in this NIL era and this portal era, that our kids are consistently doubling down on being at Houston. And I think that is the biggest thing when you think about the culture.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and Justin and I have talked about this because we followed the basketball tournament, and one of the teams was Forever Cougs. I mean, you didn't really see that from other universities. These guys were all very proud of where they'd come from, and they were all part of this new group, which I think is just so fascinating, and speaks to kind of the family and the culture. One of the things I find interesting is that Houston is like a huge sports town. You've got football, pro basketball, baseball, soccer. It's got to be hard to compete. I know when I was going to college there, I would just hop onto Elgin, take it all the way to Westheimer, go to the Summit, and buy a ticket for a Rockets game. That was my kind of my reward for a good test grade or something like that. So what's it like trying to compete with some of the other sports activities? And obviously the traffic is always its own competitor.
Right. Like you're more competing with, the freeway than you are anybody else.
Yeah.
I would say we don't. We've, the size of our arena is very intentional, right? How foolish would it have been in Houston to be like, let's go to 12,000. Why? It's really intentional the way, the good thing about we're now Coach Sampson's going into 12 years, which is, I would have lost money if you had said that you guys are going to be here longer than Oklahoma. Lost money. But we've built not only the arena, but our practice facility, and everything that we've done is really intentional. This size is really intentional because 7,000 allows us not to have to compete. And it helped too that is the move, right? When you look at what Baylor just did, and their new arena is 7,500. What Texas did, they went from the Drum to a little under 10. You're going smaller, more intimate, but you're also making a better fan experience. A lot of times when these giant arenas were initially built, it was before these TV contracts. So the only way that you could see your team play was to go. Well, now it's a better view sometimes from your living room, right? Because every game is on TV. I still watch the College of Charleston games on TV, So we don't. We've also really, really intentionally made our home games college. We are not going to compete with the NBA. If you want to go to an NBA and you want that pro basketball environment, Rockets do a phenomenal job, right? They do a great job. That is a really, really fun game to go to. But dollars to donuts, I'm a college basketball girl. And I think there's a lot of people that love college basketball, right? And love watching kids develop over the course of a season, over a course of their career. The fact that you are going to go, people, I say this a lot and people now DM me all the time, but what I saw at Oklahoma, most of our family graduated from North Carolina, is, when you are able to bring your kids to a game and you're going to teach them the womp womp, the clean version, not the dirty. When they get a little bit older, we'll teach them the dirty. But you're teaching them, you're showing them the Go Cougs, you're showing them Eat 'em Up. All of those traditions and that pageantry that make college basketball really, really, really fun and special, and it does establish generational fans. We've leaned into it. We've really wanted to have two different products. You have the NBA, and you're going to have great, great college basketball at a high, high level. And we didn't want to be chasing the NBA product because we would never win.
With the smaller arena, I'm curious, the audience that makes up that stadium. How many, like the student section, how big is that? Because I'm curious, with this a smaller arena,
Yeah.
like just the ratio of just casual fans. If if it's a smaller arena, then that means that it's more exclusive to get a ticket. It might be harder to get that in arena experience. So I'm just curious, how do you approach that challenge in terms of especially your program's on fire right now. I'm sure there's a massive demand for tickets, so I can imagine every game's sold out. So I mean, how do you make it how can you ensure that a casual fan is able to go to these games if they want to attend with just a smaller arena size?
So that's been the battle. And so that's something that you're constantly reevaluating. On the student side, it is 1,000. We do free. So we do a claim. So the week of the game, if the game's on Monday, and let's say, or on Monday, and we have a game on Wednesday and Saturday, Monday at 10 a.m. goes the claim for both. And it's usually sold out in 45 minutes. We'll let it go over the claim, right? Because, analytics isn't just for on the court. And so you kind of know your sweet spots. If I can get 1,300 kids to claim, I'll usually be in my 1,000 sweet spot. We kind of have a moving target with standing room only, right? So that for the Kansas game, everyone who bought a ticket's showing up. But if it's a midweek non-conference game, not everyone's showing up for that one. So that one, hey, let's jump in the standing room only, and there's the casual fan. And so you're kind of playing the game. There's a lot of analytics, and you're looking at your market and your sweet spot. We do a group with our Young Alumni Association. So if you are an older donor who has season tickets and can't come to a game, you can put it back on this ticket share, and a young alumni can jump in and claim a ticket. I really like, when you're in a city like Houston, the challenge for UH is that it's not Oklahoma City, where really it's just like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State alumni, right? In the city of Houston, and I always tell this story, Chris Beard's first year at Texas, it was their last year in the old drum. And Texas had put up a $100 season ticket package, right? And it was just going to be the upper section. Kind of went viral on the Texas Tech message boards and fan boards, and they bought all of them. So that game in Austin was all Texas. And so we are now in these cities where these alumni can watch their team play and sleep on their own pillow that night. There's not a lot of schools. UH fans can't do that when we're playing in Lubbock or in Lawrence, right? We're having to get in a car, we're having to get in a plane. But in Houston, TCU alumni can do that. Baylor alumni, Texas Tech, everyone's alumni can do that in Houston. And so there is that game you play of just making sure that you're speaking to your people in an arena that size.
No, that completely makes sense. That's an interesting trend that's happening within college basketball. Going back to this previous season, I'm curious with just the athletes, they're going through this journey of, trying to win a national title. At the same time, they have their studies to worry about. So I'm just curious, that dichotomy of like this big thing that's happening in their lives, but yet they got to study, they got school, they got their degrees to worry about as well. What is that like? Because we don't really hear about that in March Madness. I think your casual fan we turn our brains off to, what these kids are going through in their real lives. But can you kind of take us into their kind of day-to-day routine in terms of, if this great thing's happening, they're traveling from city to city, trying to achieve this ultimate goal, but yet, if they have their academics, I realize they have that, in the regular season, the preseason, and so on. But I mean, this is March Madness. This is the big dance. This is quite different than what they're used to. So I'm just curious, what was your experience in terms of what those students are going through?
They're student athletes. We have about a 90% graduation rate. We had every one of our kids that was at senior day this year has a UH degree. J1 graduated 2 years ago. So that when you speak out like this era, the kid graduated 2 years ago and played this year. Um, he's working on his, doctorate at this point. Um, LJ, we've had 3 straight years of All-Americans, and we had 3 straight years of All-Americans that graduated from the University of Houston. I don't think anyone's doing that. We take our academics really, really seriously. The first thing that we do, and I can't speak to other programs, I grew up in this one, is each coach is assigned players. They have to turn in their syllabus. We have, if you are 3-point and above, we're a little bit more hands off with you, and you have to check in weekly, but we trust you, you got it. If you fall maybe a little bit, it's a little bit more of a hand holding. We have a guy on our staff named Blau Batley, does a phenomenal job. We call it BU. And we have mandatory study hall in our offices every day for students who need just a little bit more of looking. And it really is, when you think of old school study hall, right? You're sitting in there. Let's go through your class. Let's go through your class schedule. What do you have to turn in? Here's an hour. We're shutting the door. The coaches know they can't bother you, and you got to lock in. And that carried through the tournament. So it's so consistent with us throughout the year that by the time the tournament comes, it's not that much of a lift for us because we're so consistent with it. But yeah, no, these are kids. They're student athletes. You know what I mean? They got upset at their girlfriend. Their mom's upset with them. It's everything that every other college kid is going through. Oh, but by the way, you're on a billion-person platform.
Yeah, I can't imagine I mean, it's got to be a big time like challenge for them. I think they've got their studies, and then they've got the eyes of the nation on them. And I saw, like, I think you posted something, I think either today or yesterday for I think Ramon Walker and Javier Francis both graduating. So that's really cool.
I always say my favorite part of my job is I get to do their recruit photo shoot, and then I get to do their graduation photo shoot. And so I get to see that kid and the evolution of him, and it's my favorite thing.
What do you do, like, so say you've got like Jarris Walker a few years ago, and then you've got, I mean, 3 top 100 prospects coming in this year. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I'm super pumped. Is there does Jarris ever kind of stay in touch with the program, come back in and
he was at the Tennessee game.
Excellent.
Yeah, they all, and what I loved about the TBT was that everyone got to see these guys because we get to see them every summer. So all of our guys are in our facility every summer. They're based out of our gym. They're in our weight room. They're in our training room. Quentin has been there on and off for the last 3 weeks. Since the season is ending. Jamal met us we came back from Arizona State, I think. No, Colorado. He met the bus. Because Toronto was playing the Rockets. So these kids can't, we can't get rid of these kids. No, it's the best part. But yeah, no, Jarris was at the Tennessee game. His mom and dad and girlfriend were at the Purdue game as well. They check in, they fly. Quentin's mom comes to games all season long. Jamal's mom comes to games. Reggie Chaney's mom comes to games. We don't talk about it a lot, but even as our kids have gone on to play professionally, their families have remained in our family. And we always tell them that last game is that you're part of our family forever. Like, you're in.
No, that's amazing. I want to kind of go back to the last season. I always find it really fascinating just in terms of the tournament, the ramifications in terms of the winner and the loser. And I'm just wondering, with the program, with the students, the coaching staff, what the emotions are you feeling just in terms of how do you focus for next season? Do you appreciate the accomplishments from last season, even though the end goal was not accomplished? Like, can I take us into the locker room of this national title game, and then kind of the days after, all the way until you're mentioning that the meeting's coming up for next season, kind of like that change of mind state? Like, is there time to reflect and really appreciate what happened? Is it like the job's not finished, immediately focus on next season? Kind of take us into kind of the mindset and the philosophy of just what's happened within the next few months, the past couple of months.
Yeah, I think it's all of those emotions. I think you go through a period of numbness. There's a grieving. I think we're, what is that? The all the stages of grief. You do go through all of them. I think we're in the angry stage now. No, a little bit. But I really think, this is what we've dedicated our lives to, and it is our lives. My dad always says, and it is the truth, that we don't expect us to be our players' whole lives, but they really are ours. And so there's a double mourning. There's the mourning of we didn't get to cut down that last net, right? Like we cut down 3 nets this year. That's crazy. That doesn't happen. We've cut down nets every year the last 5 years. But I think also the biggest mourning is, and I think we thought this kind of throughout this run, is, God, I want to keep winning because I want to keep seeing J1. I want to keep winning because I don't want to say goodbye to LJ yet. Let's keep winning because we're not finished with Malik, right? And so there's that feeling too, is that these kids we call it this like fragile ecosystem that we're living in. And we've been so blessed that we enjoy our ecosystem. And that isn't always true with every program, but we sincerely enjoy when, our facility is glass, the entire front of it is glass, and we see our kids walk up and we're like, oh, good. And we're all kind of out there, ribbing them. And so you're mourning that too, that your time with J1's over, right? Like, your time with JVA is over. And so there's that mourning cycle you go through too. But there's the end for every team, right? There's one team out of 300 plus that don't get to cut down that final net. And we all have to turn that page.
Yeah. I went through similar things, probably not as intense as all of you did, but the fans were there with you. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out. If you'd like to take a moment here to just share any information, where to find you on social or anything else you'd like to share, please do so.
Great. You can go to find all of the men's basketball, UH men's basketball, so UH Cougars MBK. That's a way better follow than anything I'm personally doing. So I encourage you to follow Houston men's basketball.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, Lauren. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.